well, welcome to Living Web Farms. Thanks for coming out on this kind of gray day, damp day. I assume everybody's been to the website if you're here, right? So just a brief word about our mission. Our mission is to give people pathways to the future. My response to the insane healthcare discussion in this country is to eat lots of greens. I oftentimes have greens 3 times a day. It's rare I have them less than 2. You know, and if for some reason I'm traveling and I haven't gotten greens, I start jonesing and I'll order salads in the weirdest places just because I need to have my greens. And I want to, as much as possible, eat from my local environment. I don't have to grow it. As long as it's here, I'm happy to eat it. And so a lot of what I'm going to talk about, actually, we don't grow, we just harvest. And then some things I'm going to talk about, we grow for other reasons, but we get to eat the greens too. And then there's some things we actually do grow for summer greens. And I'm going to be honest, none of them are ideal according to our prejudices. You know, well, maybe 1 or 2 I can think of are ideal, the ones we grow. You can grow cultivated version of Amaranth, and it is a wonderful green, flat out though. I was too prejudiced to try it for years, just because sometimes the nature of the weed bothers me so much that I won't deign to eat it because I think it's going to be somehow bothersome when I eat it. And then I find out that it's spectacular. But the issues with the ones that we grow, a lot of the ones we grow, are that there's a little bit of sliminess to them. Not as much as okra, by a long shot, and not even as much as the one that is most commonly known of those, Malabar spinach. But some amount of sliminess, and then it took my partner to point out a bit of a resinous taste to a couple of the other quote spinaches. I like to joke that the British had their empire, but it was all in the southern half of the world, and so they couldn't have their spinach. So they named everything in the world spinach, even though it has nothing to do with spinach, you know. So literally I have here, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items that are called spinach that are not in the least bit spinach. And they're all good to me if used in conjunction with other greens. They work great. They really lend themselves to curries because curries have a strong flavor, so if there's a little bit of resin in there, you don't notice it. And it's a sauced item, so you don't notice if it's slightly slimy, you know. They also lend themselves to being combined with other greens. A perfect combination is some of these spinaches with amaranth, which is kind of dry. You know, it's not nearly as juicy as, let's say, lamb's quarters or, let's see, another green like purslane or something like that that are quite juicy. You know, and we use the juicier greens, kale and collards and spinach. They're all pretty juicy, you know. Not many of what I'm going to talk about lend themselves to salads. Exceptions are one that I'm going to talk about that we've yet to successfully grow. And I realize I just have to create a really dry place for them, which is hard in our climate. And that is ice plant. If you've ever been to California, it's everywhere, it's xeriscaping. It's like between all the roads and stuff. And lo and behold, it's edible. And apparently good for salad. I've yet to try it. I can't even get it to grow because it's too wet here. So I've got to set up a real good drainage place for it and give it a try. And then what might happen is it doesn't do good most years, but then in those drought years when the other greens aren't doing that well, it'll come in and, you know, star. You know, we'll see if it'll self-seed. I know it won't overwinter here, but we'll play with it, you know. And there's a few other things like that that I'm going to talk about that, frankly, I've yet to try, either because of my prejudices, and they're pretty big, you know, I'm pretty human, or because we don't have them in a big enough stage yet that I'm willing to harvest from them. Some of those are tree leaves. Amazingly, there's several tree leaves that are good to eat, good greens. And I know of some people that claim that they eat them all summer, so I'm going to recommend them based on that, even though I personally can't say. All right, so I'm going to start out with the spinaches, and I'm going to show you the ones we have here, and talk about how we grow them. The one that is, I think, most commonly known, how many people here have heard of Malabar spinach? Yeah, okay, so it's a lovely plant if you get the red one, and it's pretty nice even if you get the green one. It's very abundant. If you don't start the plants, it's going to come in late because it needs really warm soil to germinate. And I found actually if I'm selling to restaurants, they'll take it and they want to use it as a garnish because they take that red stem and the leaves and just lay them around, you know. Interestingly also, they make purple berries that are used to thicken soups like okra is. Typical, same kind of sliminess, and I think it imparts a pretty dark kind of purple color to it also. This is a really nice green. And it's got a nice flavor, a mild flavor, but it is a little slimy. So once again, I recommend cutting it. I recommend about 20% of this with something like amaranth. or one of the other summer greens, because then, you won't pick up on that slimy nearly as much. So instead of, to quote my former boss, Tresca Lindsay, if you put about 20% of this in with another green, and maybe it's August and you've already got turnips going along, so you got turnip greens or whatever green there is, you mix it in with this and it gives the other greens kind of a melting quality. What was slimy now is instead this wonderful silkiness, because it's not nearly as slimy as okra, but it is a little slimy. So for some people, if you eat it straight up, it's going to be like, ooh, I don't like that, But very mild, easy as all heck to grow, takes the heat incredibly well, doesn't get bothered at all. Can make a huge vine, can cover a lot of territory. You got to control it, and will volunteer. The problem is the volunteers are later, so you're not getting to eat it till sometime in August. Whereas if you start it yourself, then you could be, growing it and plant it in May, early May, and be eating it, in July and a longer period of time. Okay, so that's one of the spinaches. Question, okay.
How do you get a start from it? Like a lot of these tropicals, I've been having a hard time getting a start.
Okay, so a bunch of them you can do from cuttings. But yeah, the tropicals are hard to come by. Baker's Creek is where I got a bunch of them, But you can get them from us. I've got starts I'm willing to give you. And a lot of them are very easy to grow from cuttings.
And when you say you start them in May, are you thinking in pots or in the soil?
You could put them in the soil in May probably, but you'd want to have warmed the soil with fabric and put some cover over it because the cold nights are going to slow it down. If you started in pots, I'd start it in April if you could keep them from getting, if you can get them, because even if, they're not going to die with the night that dips into the 40s, but they're not going to germinate and thrive. But there's plenty of days in a greenhouse that are warm that'll get them up and going. And if you got established, getting that root system established, that's what gets it, and then it'll just take off, And once it gets going, it's hard to stop it. There is, by the way, a more vigorous green version. And it is more vigorous, as is often the case. Almost always when we breed for color, we're giving up vigor. That happens all the time. But this is vigorous enough and it's so pretty that I don't bother, And usually there's also things like anthocyanins that are in things that have the red and the purple, and they're good for us, and antioxidants is good for us. So I have another reason to grow the color, but mostly I grow the color because I like it. And I know some people around here like to look at it way more than they like to eat it. So I don't want to discourage you from trying it. I think it's excellent. And I add it to my typical lunch is like, oh, I got to go to lunch. I don't have any greens in the fridge, and I grab whatever weeds are next to me and a handful of that and some of the other so-called slimy greens. Take them, chiffonade them, cook them up with whatever I've got else in the refrigerator, And for breakfast, I've got a couple handfuls of those left over. I have them with an egg. That's the way I eat. And I never get bored. The greens are all different flavors, And I have different combinations of the other, quote, spinaches. And so it's always fascinating, And then I do curries and stuff with them also. Okay, so the next spinach I'm going to talk about is two that are pretty interchangeable in many ways. That's Okinawa and longevity spinaches. This is longevity. It's not doing as well right now, and it's more because it was crowded by other things, because it does just as well as Okinawa, and indeed usually makes bigger leaves. Okay, this is Okinawa. If I was going to pick one, I'd pick the one with the purple leaves. I've got this Amaranth in here, and that's going to confuse you. Because it's pretty, and once again, likelihood of other nutrients, But that back leaf is really pretty. I think this would lend itself quite well to an informal border around a house. Far enough out to be away from any pollutants that are coming off the house, but are along a sidewalk or something. And your neighbors might think, gee, that's a little unruly, and that they ever said, you can say, oh, I'm trimming some tonight. Do you want some? And you can just trim it and eat it. And both of these, this is longevity, this is Okinawa, lend themselves wonderfully to being cut and rooted. Indeed, I've ever knocked a leaf off, and just out of curiosity, I've stuck the leaf stem in the ground and it rooted and grew. So it's incredibly easy to propagate this. Won't make it through the winter, but you can just bring a little one in the house, root a little one, keep it as a small plant, it'll look pathetic all winter. Put it out when it's warm, it'll take off, and you have it growing again. So it's a real winner. And once again, not nearly as slimy as our mucilaginous. I should say mucilaginous, right? That's a little bit more appetizing, right? Not nearly as mucilaginous as the Malabar spinach, so therefore way less mucilaginous than okra. But it does have that quality somewhat, And both of those are the ones that, and if I try real hard, I can discern what Diane calls kind of a resinous, piney taste, you know. But it's very subtle, but everybody's taste buds are different. Somebody's going to taste it and go, oh, I can't stand it. Other people are going to go, God, that's delicious, you know. So just depends on who you are. I think they're way worth trying. I think they're lots of fun to grow, and they can grow. You can grow a lot of greens that way and have them all the time. And I have no problem cooking those straight up. The Malabar, I always have to kind of cut it a little bit with something. But those, I can just cook those straight up, and they're just fine. I like them a whole lot. I usually don't because there's other things. Yes?
With the Okinawan spinach, I had to order one from Florida every winter. You know, that's the only way I could find it. But anyway, it grew okay, but it certainly didn't grow anything like what the description was. Is there a...
Did you have it in a full sun situation?
Yeah.
Full sun, good drainage?
Good drainage, high organic matter soil.
Weird, because ours just blooms. I'm not sure. There might have been some soil deficiency, you know. I try some rock dust, you know.
Okay.
See if there's a mineral issue. Yeah, I really can't. I'm trying to think of was it 2013 by any chance?
No, I grew it just this year.
This year, okay.
For the first time.
Well, you know.
I'll try in different places.
Yeah. You know, this year they don't look quite as good. This has been to me a strange year that I can't really figure out. Like all of our harvests, which usually are way early because we start things early, put them in greenhouse, are real slow. And these guys, you know, I got them up pretty late, but they're just not booming like they do other years. But it's not like we have severely dry or severely wet weather. It should be a fine year. So sometimes we just don't understand all the things. I would definitely try it other years. I think you'll find that it'll do great. But I recommend the rock dust anyways. It's a great, easy to get amendment. You can pick it up at the quarry for virtually nothing, you know. And it's safe. You don't have to worry about using too much of it. You pretty much can't use too much of it. But it might just give you the micronutrients you need to get it to do like it's supposed to do. And I can tell you it has done that way for us, you know. It does want adequate moisture. We always have plenty of moisture here, you know. And I don't know how well it likes too much moisture, but since I've grown it at the bottom end of our garden here, which is always kind of wet, it can handle a fair amount of wet feet. But I don't know if it was really wet, if it would be problematic. I haven't tried it in a really wet place that was always sopping wet, you know. I'm sorry to hear you haven't had the success that we've had with it, but I think it's worth trying again, you know. And just take a cutting. You don't have to buy it again. You've got it now. You can keep it going. All right, so then the next one is one that I don't have a sample of because they're just frankly growing really slow, which I forgot how slow they grow. We let it go because the truth is, I really thought for this class I should revisit it. That's one of those ones I'm prejudiced against. How many people here have grown New Zealand spinach? Okay, New Zealand spinach looks wonderful. It's very productive. It's got a taste I don't like, you know. I got to admit it's got a taste I don't like. Once again, I can cut it with other greens, and so I like having it to add into other things, but I wouldn't do 20%. I'd do probably 10% or something, you know. But it's not here, probably because we do so much mulching and stuff that we mulched it out. But at the Highland Lake Inn and other places, I've had the same plant be there for years, and I don't know if it's a perennial or self-seeding. I don't remember, you know. But it tends to be you've got it forever, and there's no work to growing it, and it can get really rampant, give you loads of greens. And I think a lot of eating summer greens is about combining a bunch of stuff, you know. And it actually makes for interesting combinations. You can vary those all the time, and you can find out how much New Zealand spinach you like, and you might decide you like it fine, period. I've had people talk about using it in salad, and I couldn't imagine it, you know, the flavor. And there's some little ones, if anybody's curious, I can give you a little taste, you know. And I thought, maybe if they're tiny, it doesn't taste the same. So I tried it the other day, it's like, nah. Raw, I definitely don't like it. I've got to cook it, you know, and I've got to include it in something like a curry to enjoy it, you know. But it's easy as all heck to grow, and there's really no reason not to have a little corner of it someplace in your garden. And then once again, of course, if there's an electromagnetic pulse and the food system was broken and stuff, would I figure out how to enjoy it? I sure would, you know. Is it nutritious? Yes. So, you know, so I don't have that one to show you here, but we can show you a little one down in the garden at the end. And once they get going, a lot of these guys are about reaching a certain size, and then they're just explosive in their growth, you know. They just take off. What time of year did you put your Okinawan spinach in?
As soon as the ground got warm, like to 60s, I kept it in a container inside for most of the spring. So
well, then it should, I mean, actually,
probably May, you know, mid-May.
Yeah, mid-May is probably an okay time to put it out. I tend to wait till the end of the month because it's one of those ones like sweet potatoes that isn't going to do much. So I'd grow it in a bigger pot inside, but it shouldn't have been stunted. I don't know, but maybe it is. I mean, some plants like peppers literally get stunted by having cold nights.
It's a bush that's maybe 1.5 feet in diameter. When I was reading, it's like several big branches with 3 feet out.
Well, okay, but they're Florida, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so here, one Okinawa spinach would be about an area about that wide, about that square, about maybe 24 inches square, and up to, before it starts falling over 2 feet, So does that sound more like your size?
About half.
Okay, well then, yeah, I think keep playing with it. I think you'll get there, I think it can perform that well,
It's a fun plant.
Oh, it's a fun plant, yeah, and pretty much I've never found that I pick it too much. It just keeps coming, I used to actually pick the leaves off, the bigger leaves, but if you look at it, it's a lot of work. They're not big enough leaves for me to be picking the leaves off of. So what I've learned instead is I come in and I take like about that much and I just chiffonade once again, chop it up. You know what chiffonade is? It's where you make a kind of a, like a roll out of your greens, and then I just slice it really thin. And I don't notice the stems at all. Yeah, Joe?
Well, that was the question. Stems or just leaves or both?
I've taken to eating the stems on these because I don't like having to pick that many leaves, and it works fine, And I kind of judge it by what the stem feels like, Actually, this one here, I think maybe I'd stop up there, like right below that bunch. But that's fine. I can get a lot of those tops really fast. And they'll just shoot more tops off, And once in a while, if I'm inspired, I might just reach down and grab some leaves, if there's a bunch that are close together. But I'm always looking for fast harvest. I don't want to spend a lot of time picking my dinner,
But sometimes the stems and leaves have different sort of taste profiles, right?
Yeah, I haven't noticed a huge difference here, But I am chopping it up all pretty fine and mixing it together. But once I started doing that, because I originally ate stems, I didn't notice that there was a big difference in flavor, And I've got a fairly well-trained palate. I've made it my living as a cook for a long time, I pay attention, I care a lot about that. But I'm sure there's other people who go, oh, the stems are so much different, and I don't really like the stems, or I love the stems more, or, they should be treated like a separate vegetable. I mean, there's no telling how each person's going to experience. You can eat the finely chopped up stems, and it's faster. Yes?
Is there a big nutrient difference between stems and leaves?
Well, I'm yet to find good information on the nutrient profile of these, though. As I was saying I'm going to teach about this at the Carolina Farm Stewardship Conference. And they said I was going to give a nutritional profile of each plant. And I said, some I haven't found yet, But I think it's almost always pretty certain that they're high in vitamin A or the vitamin A precursors. Almost all green plants are, And there's a pretty good chance of vitamin C, A fair chance of foliate. There's some things that are just in greens, they show up a lot. The stems, what I know about the stems, the difference in stems, has to do with winter, which is a little off topic, but it's important to mention, I guess. And that is, in the wintertime, it's important not to eat greens if you can control it, especially if they've had a lot of nitrogen that have been harvested at the end of a cloudy day, or even at the beginning of a day that's had several cloudy days before, because the plants store nitrogen, as nitrates, which can be carcinogenic and indeed have even caused the deaths of babies in far northern countries. Parents fed their babies enough greens that they got blue baby syndrome, too much nitrogen in their blood, taking the space of oxygen. Here, that's not going to happen probably, but we could be taking in greens that are too much nitrogen, aren't good for us. A couple of years ago, I learned that the stems have even more. So now, in the summertime, I chop the stems up, like I said. Winter, take all my leaves off the stems. Harvesting at the end of a sunny day solves that problem, by the way. Because the plant can use the nitrogen. And that's basically plants picked between about the 10th of December to about the 15th of February. Though I know of a cow that died in Florida during several days of very, very cloudy, cold, rainy weather at the end of February from eating forage radishes. And when they thought about what it had been, they thought it might have been nitrates. They tested them and it was high enough in nitrates to kill an old, not well cow. So it doesn't immediately, when we give like dates and stuff, nature doesn't work that way. It's like, depending on the year, it may have a little bit more or less, but that's a general bracket of when that's more of an issue. That's the only thing I can tell you about the nutritional, Oftentimes, more nitrogen means more protein, but I don't know if that's the case with this, And greens have oftentimes a surprising amount of protein. We tend to not think of greens as a source of protein, but they can have a lot of protein, and I know more about that with the exception of amaranth, I think that's got a fair amount. I know more about that in plants that are, and actually lamb's quarters, which I wasn't thinking of mentioning lamb's quarters for this class, but I found enough nice patches that I think it's worth talking about, and I'll talk about it more when I get to it. Both of those have some protein, too. Okay, so the next one is one that I'm just trying now for the first time. I just saw it in the catalog. I ordered it. It's not very big yet, and it's a close relative of lamb's quarters, and it's called Aztec spinach. Once again, not a spinach, in the same family as, actually now they might say it's in the same family as spinach. As they've been doing DNA classification of plants, they're changing the classifications. They always change the classification. It drives me nuts. I learn a classification, they change the name, they even move them around, and that's what they do with this. And when I first heard that they were now classifying amaranth as in the same family with lamb's quarters, I was like, no, they're not at all the same. Then I stepped back, took a deep breath, and looked, and there's a lot of similarities. But I just always thought it was very different plants, but apparently not, And of course, that means that Aztec spinach is related to spinach because it's in the Chenopodium family, which is the family of spinach and chard. And if you look at lamb's quarters, you can see why it's called Chenopodium, because that means in Latin goosefoot. And if you look at the leaves of lamb's quarters, they look just like a goose's foot, and we'll look at that in a moment. And so this is one that it's not as quite off the wall to call spinach. But actually, I think that both lamb's quarters and probably this Aztec spinach are similar and satisfy me in a way that spinach satisfies me, but even more so because they're hardier. There's more richness to them. They're drier, but there's more richness. So I like them a whole lot. As a cooked green, I'd take lamb's quarters over spinach anytime. But as a raw green, you're not going to get me to either eat Aztec spinach or lamb's quarters, except for the smallest of leaves in a salad. And really the only time I'll probably do that is there's one version of lamb's quarters that has magenta centers. And so the young leaves are very pretty in a salad. When we get to amaranth, that their young leaves are very pretty in a salad too, because they have that same kind of purple on the back that the Okinawan spinach has. So the last spinach is one that I'm just realized for this class we had languishing in the greenhouse from when Wade and Kate, our interns from 2015, I believe, were here, and he brought it from Florida. And we hadn't really wanted to put it out someplace because although it supposedly is frost sensitive, I envisioned a hurricane kind of time when there was a huge amount of water flowing, and it escaped from here and ended up flowing a long ways to where there wasn't hard frost and it could survive. So I wanted to only grow it in a way that was trapped. And so now I finally have set up, and if people are interested I can show you it, though it's just barely going yet. I have a kid's pool that's set in a stream that flows pretty modestly, except for in the most raging of times. And I could probably just pull it out for those raging times if I know they're coming. And it's another, not at all spinach, but pretty mild, rampant grower if you have a very wet situation. Okay, so those are the spinaches, and they're all ones we have to grow. Mostly we have to bring them in.
Can you tell us the name of the last spinach?
It's called, I'm sorry, I didn't say that, water spinach.
Oh.
Yeah. And once again, not a spinach at all, but called spinach because people miss their spinach, They were quite happy to go impose themselves on the rest of the world, but they wanted their spinach with them. Okay, so then other ones that we do grow and buy in, the one that is basically just an analog of a wild one, which I'll talk about again separately when I get to the wilder things, are callaloo. Anybody familiar with callaloo? If you've been to the Caribbean, it's pretty famous. There's a seafood soup made with it. And it is simply a cultivar of what we know in the mountains as pigweed or red root or amaranth. Yeah.
How do you spell that?
Callalloo. And it just is, I'll show you right now. We do have an example of that one. And actually then I'll show you what I want to warn you about. I have some things put back here to kind of have you be careful. This is amaranth. Does it have the flower on it yet? I hope I got one with the flower because I want to show you the flower. No, okay, well. Oh, and the lamb's quarters is in that bag. I think we might have some lamb's quarters here. Anyways, that's the amaranth, and it starts wilting immediately, so it doesn't do quite as much justice because it's a very robust looking plant in the garden.
You eat the leaves or
Eat the leaves and the stems and the root if you want.
Okay.
which I never would have known except for I was gifted a book about 4 weeds. This is one of them. And the flowers actually cook, you can cook them, they're kind of broccoli-like, they say. They're a flower head. You know, that's how they're broccoli-like. But the whole thing's edible. Once again, the bigger stems, I would chiffonade, you know. But they're actually fairly tender. They're edible.
And this is something you planted from seed? Or
No, this is a wild one, but I do have some out there that I planted from seed. That's the callaloo. This is what we call, in the mountains, either pigweed, because it's piggish, it takes up your whole garden, or red root, because there's red at the bottom, which I can show you on other ones. And I want you to know that there's also an herb called red root, nothing to do with this weed. That's in the Ceanothus family. It's really good for the immune system. It's a lovely native shrub, but it's not at all related to this, okay? So I prefer to call this amaranth. It's the least confusing. It is amaranth, you know, but a lot of people call it pigweed. And it's abundant. I eat a lot of it in the summer. You're bound to find it around. What I want to warn you about is this one. I'm good, I can show you the flowers on this one. This one, now it's gone to flower, so it doesn't as much look like that one, but it looks a lot like it, but it has the nastiest, hard, sharp thorns. And it's the worst when you're weeding, because you just think you're weeding amaranth, and you grab it, and it's like, you know. So this is one of the few plants that I make it a duty to kill everyone I see. You know, I don't welcome this in the garden because it causes so much pain.
What is it?
It's amaranth. It's amaranth, but it's gone to seed. So this guy here would have a similar seed head, okay? And indeed, one that'd be great to show you because it is probably crossed with this one to this one, and it's got a reddish stem too. So not all the reddish stem ones, I just touched that thing and it hurt, you know? Not all the reddish stem ones are gonna bite you like this one does. And you could eat these leaves too, but boy, I'd be careful taking them off. You know?
Is it the same as horse nettle?
Not at all. No, horse nettle is very different and not at all edible. This is very edible. Horse nettle is in the tomato family. You know, and it's got thorns too, but there's a lot of plants with thorns. These thorns are way worse than horse nettles. They're harder and sharper and harder to see. They hide. I mean, can you even see them from where you guys are? Yeah, but they're there, you know. You can see it. It's a nasty little guy. Now, the one thing that'll give it away, but see, I don't know. See, a lot of these plants are wonderfully variable. So this crosses with the other one. But the one that's pretty true, like this one, they always have these little clusters of flowers at the stem, which I've never seen on the other amaranth. So if you see that, you can count on it being a spiny one. But like I said, you could also find, which I left at the other property, if anybody wants to come get Malabar spinach, you'll get to see them. But we're growing next to our rock dust a bunch of, it looked like this, not quite as deep red, but all red along the stem, but no thorns and no flowers. So it was a cross. These guys cross, you know, there's nothing stable about the population. It's changing all the time. This is just one, you know, I put it in the back there because it was the things I want to warn you about, you know.
So do all the amaranths that have thorns have red stems?
I've not run into a green one that had thorns. That doesn't mean it couldn't happen, but I think it'd be it may not be as red though, you know. So if you see red, proceed with caution, you know.
Okay.
You can quickly figure out if it's got thorns, you know. Yeah. But you don't want to figure out by grabbing it, you know. It's not a pleasant experience. You'll survive, but you won't be happy.
Those amaranths are native, is that what you're saying?
Well, they're not. I don't know if they're native. I think they came in with the Europeans. I think actually amaranth was native to South America. I think the Incas had it, yeah. So it got moved around who knows when, you know. We've moved around a lot more than we realize, you know. Humans have been all over the place, you know. Oh, I do have the lamb's quarters here. Well, let's go to the lamb's quarters. It's a little bit out, but since we're talking about them all. This is the lamb's quarters, and you can see why they call it goosefoot, or chenopodium. And the American Indians ate some version of this called goosefoot. There's just a lot of these weeds. They're all edible. They're all good. The Aztec spinach is another one, you know. And this is one of my favorite weeds. For years, this was like, I ate 90% of the weeds I ate was lamb's quarters, you know. I was one of the first people to sell them at market. And then later on, other people started selling them. They got upset with me because by midsummer, I would just have a table covered with them and say, all you want for $1 or $2. And they're like, you're charging too little. It's like, they're weeds. I developed this market. I'm giving people abundance. Leave me alone, you know. If you don't have enough, don't be such a good farmer, you know. Okay, great. This is the other one. And see, it's not a spiny, and it just has a little bit of red in there. But I'm going to bet it's got that red because it crossed with the spiny, you know. So someplace at a certain point, it would be spiny. It also has what those flowers look like more. So those flowers can be cooked, and they'll be fine to eat, you know. Once they're making seeds, they might be a little different. I don't think this is making seed yet. No, it's not there. And by the way, this is all about using weeds, right? But if you don't want to have too many of these in the garden, don't let it go to seed. Hundreds of thousands of seeds from a big plant. And these guys can get really big and throw a lot of seed. It just depends on where you're at. I mean, actually, it can be a bonanza for spring greens because they'll be all like, you know, just like a couple thousand seedlings this big, all of which have these nice little purple backings on their leaves and are quite tender and nice in salads, you know. But they could also scatter through your garden. It just depends on your strategy, you know. We tend to more farm in a direction of weeding a lot and mulching a lot rather than trying to not let things go to seed. And so it works for us because we eat a lot of the weeds, you know. But it just depends on your style. If you don't eat the weeds, then you might not want to let them develop quite so much. Okay, so callaloo is a cultivated version of it, and it's widely grown in the Caribbean, and it's famous for a fish stew that they put it in. But it's used for all kinds of things. And it's a great green. It loves the heat. It does quite well. It booms. You won't be disappointed in how big it gets, you know. And it's easy to get the seed, though. Frankly, if I wasn't teaching a class, I'd probably just eat the wild stuff because it's here. You know, I don't have to bother to grow it. And I really love things I don't have to grow, you know. And I think that when we're not breeding, the plants tend to be more nutritious. We bring our prejudices and select towards things that we want that tend to not make them as nutritious. So I prefer the wild one, but the callaloo is worth growing. Okay, another one that we grow that might be surprising to you as a green, sweet potato greens. Quite fascinating about sweet potato greens. Sweet potatoes themselves are nutritional powerhouses, but no real amount of protein. The greens are high in protein.
And that is the greens from a cultivated plant that's going to grow sweet potatoes?
Yeah.
Okay.
And somebody said, could I eat the ornamental ones? I said, I don't see why not. Unless they were grown in a nursery that used chemicals to, you know.
And how will the effect be on the...
The more you pick the greens, the less sweet potatoes you're going to get. So be judicious, you know. If you got a lot of sweet potatoes, you can go out there. I only tend to go for the smaller, you know, this is a volunteer that lived in our greenhouse. So I brought the whole plant in. We decided not to let it rampage through the greenhouse with the tomatoes. But otherwise, I go out and I tend to pick from these kind of things the lightest leaves because they're the tenderest. And I'll just go take, you know, one or two off each plant as I'm walking by and get a good sized handful pretty quickly. I'll usually bulk it up with something else. Last year I had the longevity and perpetual spinach in the same greenhouse as the sweet potatoes. And then of course there were some amaranths sticking their heads out. So I'd go grab the top off an amaranth, grab a bunch of sweet potato greens, bunch of longevity and Okinawan spinach, and I had my lunch, you know. It worked really well. And so that's another one that we, you know, grow and end up eating, but don't grow it to eat. And this year, I might still pick two plants and tell people these two are not going to be, one will end up making roots, but the other one I'm going to eat a lot from to see, like, can I take 50% of the leaves and how much will it affect the harvest? But I probably would wait till about now. I wouldn't think to do that until it was making a lot of leaves because I would know that the plant wouldn't make any root at all. And I would want to see if you can get some root while harvesting it for greens. Of course, the time to really hit it is not in the heat of the summer, but come fall when you're about to be done with the plant. Then you can just go to town on it, you know. You can eat a lot, you know, a whole lot. Okay, if we grow cucumbers up on trellises, we don't want them to branch out. We want them to just be one vine. So all the time they're trying to make shoots. And Rocco and I have an ongoing debate. He wants to take off the whole shoot. I want to leave most of the shoot because it's made that leaf and it can photosynthesize. And if I just take the tip off it, it's not going anywhere, you know. But it just bothers him. It's not neat enough. And so just now I went through and picked all the tips. He may still go back and take the shoots off. I don't know. But those tips, I've several times gotten them this year, just pruning. I go home and I cook them, and boy, do you have to cook them for a while. If you don't cook them for a while, like stinging nettle, which we're going to get to, the hairs on there, you feel them in your mouth. I mean, the stinging nettle no longer stings you, but it's a gritty kind of unpleasant texture. So you cook these enough. But then, pretty fascinating, because I have had a roommate years ago in a collective house where we all took turns making dinner, and he cooked cucumber, and boy, did I not like that dish. You know, yes, you can cook a cucumber. Who says you can't cook a cucumber? Do I like it? Not at all. You know, there was just something about it, the wateriness, and that flavor with that wateriness And now this limp texture didn't work for me. But those greens cooked down, they have a cucumber flavor too, and they worked for me. They were pretty interesting. It wasn't as strong a cucumber flavor, and the texture was right. It wasn't this real watery kind of almost slimy texture that I didn't like. It was pretty fascinating. And I put them in some curries, and they worked really nice in curries, you know.
So you're talking about the cucumber branch, tip, and leaf.
Yeah, about that much of it is what I take. Maybe you could take more. And I had to do a bunch of research to find that you could eat that. I first learned that in a lot of Asian countries, they eat the growing tips of squash, you know. And so I thought to bring more up. I've got one that I took here from a plant that I was dyeing, and it's just like one leaf, which, I mean, it's not going to be rocket science for you to recognize it. And that one little leaf has kind of disappeared from here on. But it's just a young squash leaf. Oh, here it is, you know. That'll be totally tender and delicious, you know. But indeed, it could actually be more like a stem, this, and a few smaller leaves and a few tendrils, and all of it would be good. So you know what I'm talking about now? Quite tasty. Once again, how much do you want to eat? If you've got a bunch of winter squash going, and it's trying to spread to places you don't want, then you could just do the kind of pruning I do on the cucumber, control it, and get to eat it. You know, it's not going to be a huge amount of food, but it's going to add. Lots of times the way you get to eat summer greens is by pulling all these things together. And that's actually pretty interesting. So I've done...
Isn't that squash leaf like hairy and...
Once again, cook it enough. Cook it enough, it's not hairy at all. It's quite tasty. Really? But you don't undercook these guys, right? This is called Gallon Soga. It's got a bunch of mountain names, no business, I think it's called, because it's got no business being in your garden. Doug Elliott tells that story, you know, mountain thing. And once again, it's a little wilted, so it doesn't give you quite the same look. I'll pass it around. It's got these nondescript yellow flowers, and like a lot of weeds that we eat in the summer, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't get bitter or change in flavor, you know, so it can go to seed. The stem's tender, chopped up, it can be eaten too. I wouldn't eat way down here, but I'd eat about down to there, you know. And literally, it's been weeded. I just hated seeing it being weeded, but I knew we had to get the cover crop in. Coming up between our corn a week ago, like almost every space between the plants, totally full of maybe 60 or 70 of these guys so close together, you can just come through and slice them off, take them up and cook them up. I've been eating them all this time. Totally tender and delicious. 1 or 2 blades of grass, mostly the weed that was in with it was purslane, which is not a problem at all, you know.
Could you say that name again?
Gallon Soga.
Gallon?
G-A-L-I-N-S-O-G-A, I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure I got the right vowel in, I think it's an I. There you got the flower. Pretty nondescript flower. There's usually a lot more of them. I don't bother once it's in big time in flower because it's just too many stems and not enough leaves. There's always, the thing about this is you never have a shortage. There's always more and more successions because do people recognize it? You've seen this in your garden, right? I mean, there's no shortage of it in the average garden. Do I need to bring it back here for you to get a better look at it? Just pass it around. It's pretty abundant. I can eat it any day of the summer. There's never a shortage of it. And I'm now eating it most days. And why wasn't I interested in it? Because it was hairy. I didn't think I was going to like it, you know. The hairiness wasn't appealing. But you don't notice the hairs at all. That you don't have to cook a long time at all to get rid of the hairs. So did you see how hairy that was?
No, but I'm going
We'll send it back to you. Yeah, you know. I mean, I can literally toss that in before I do my eggs. Let it cook while I'm maybe getting the eggs out and getting my hot drink going for the morning, which might be 2-3 minutes. Put my egg in there. And the way I like to do it, because I'm trying to cook my eggs so that the yellow doesn't cook that much, but the white's thoroughly done. And so I'll make a little bed in the middle of the Gallon Soga, drop that egg in there. When the white's pretty well cooked, I'll then take it and flip it on top of more cooking Gallon Soga, because I oftentimes don't use oil, I just use water. You know, so then the egg won't stick. And then I have this little sandwich of an egg with a tender yolk, with a still uncooked yolk between cooked Gallon Soga. None of it is hairy. It's all tender and delicious. It all works fine. It's pretty funny how completely unwilling I was to try it forever simply because of what it looked like. And I was totally wrong. I finally tried it. I was like, wow, this is good. And every year I eat more and more of it because it's so abundant. It's like no shortage of it ever, you know. And also, interestingly, let me show it up, show the hairiness up here. Interestingly, if you're from Colombia, this is a prized green, which they import, which is hilarious. They import it dried. It's part of a national dish, which as of a couple years ago, I don't know if it's still the case, but Francesca, who used to teach her father was a diplomat, she said, It is on the home page of the Colombian Embassy because there's a recipe for a national stew that includes this: chicken, tomatoes, a potato that takes about 240 days to grow that's really kind of mealy. I think that's about it, and onion. You know. Oh, and corn, not sweet corn, but more of like a hard corn. So it's kind of starchy. So that's it. Wouldn't you think that hairiness would be not very appealing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally, you don't even notice it at all. Totally good. Absolutely tender.
And you just like saute these or something? Or
Well, okay.
water?
I saute them sometimes, but for health reasons, I've watched this video and they're trying to encourage me not to fry stuff. Of course, I still do because I love it.
Yeah.
But I learned that in the morning, I don't have to have it fried. I don't need it for this, unless I'm adding onion, which I like to saute a little bit. I simply, a little bit of water, get it steaming, and then put that egg in there. And as long as I flip it on top of more gallon soga, it doesn't stick, you know, so it works great, you know.
What is that?
This is stinging nettle. So stinging nettle. If you were to touch this, brush it, your fingers could touch it and not get too bit, but I thought that recently when I was trying to make some fermented tea for the garden out of it, and I grabbed it too hard, and boy, the tip of my finger hurt for a couple days because I ground in. Basically, formic acid, I think the same thing is it formic or fomic? The thing that ants have? Fomic, okay. Formic, right? Formic acid. Same thing in this. You know, it's also what's in bee stings. And so it injects it into there and you feel it, you know. But it's an incredibly rich, very high in protein, talking about nutrients, rich, full of all kinds of minerals. You cook this, save the water, it's the green, most lovely green you ever see. People make tea out of it. People use it as a tea for allergies. And some people say, though Doug Elliott, we have some videos with Doug Elliott in them, and he's a long-established wild food expert and folklorist in the area. He says that he can find no evidence to prove it, and he doesn't think you have to worry about it. But I purposely picked one that's got the flowers. Some people say not to eat it when it's in flower. Doug says no problem. Why I might eat it when it's not in flower is more leaf. You know, the leaf is what I'm about. I only like the very tenderest tips as far as the stems on this. This is a plant that you can actually pull fiber off of for fiber. So pretty quickly, the stems get pretty tough, you know. So I strip them down, boil them for a good long time, and I tend to use them as a sauce if I'm not doing a soup. Soup or sauce.
What do you mean you use them as a sauce?
Well, by the time I boiled them, right, they're this really cooked, deep green thing, and I kind of just chop them up and then add some flavoring kind of things in it. Maybe this one green I'm going to show you, some garlic and stuff, and put it on top of something. And it's real nice. It kind of spreads that flavor, you know. It's totally, there's no fat in it. It's not really a sauce, but it works for a sauce for me, you know. And I'm pretty creative. You know? I'm always jamming on trying to both satisfy. I love like stuff that's not good for me. Who doesn't, you know? So I love gravy, you know, but I know it's not good for me. And this satisfies the same way. I like that kind of moist, you know, spreading of flavors, and this does it. This time of year, if you don't want the smaller leaves or the disputed possibility that the flowers aren't good for you, then what you want to do is cut it back. It'll come back. It's a perennial. Do know if you plant this, put it where you can control it because it'll spread, you know. So put it where you mow around it, or maybe where it's surrounded by a house and a sidewalk or something. And then beware, it'll spread by seed too, but you can control it if you pay attention. If you're not going to pay attention, don't grow it because it'll take over and it will be a pain. Speaking of pain, it has another use, off topic, but I think it's interesting as long as we're mentioning it. I don't know how many people know about apitherapy. We're going to have a whole class on it in September, but that's the use of bee stings to cause a natural flooding of a problem, painful area with cortisone, naturally produced by your body. I have a brother who's getting knees replaced and has a bunch of joint issues, and I'm going to send this to him because I can't sell him on a bee sting. There's just no way. He hates bees. He freaks when they're around him. A bee sting's never going to work, but I think he can handle this. And you just would brush it, you know, and I didn't brush it hard enough to even feel it. You'd brush it enough that you'd feel it where your joints are painful, and it causes the same kind of reaction, though not as strong, you know. And that can be a way to relieve joint pain, getting cortisone, but none of the bad side effects of the produced, but rather just a naturally released. So it's got a bunch of uses. It's a wonderful plant. I highly recommend it. We also just chop it up, toss it in a bucket, let it ferment, and make a fermented tea, loads of protein, so loads of nitrogen. Our plants all love it. I think every homestead needs a patch of it if you can pay attention. And it's a lot easier to grow than longevity spinach. You know? I mean, this will definitely cover a big area. You don't have to worry about that. Yeah.
But you can put it in an area where you mow around.
Totally.
And that's really great because you can manage it that easily.
I highly recommend that you do that if you're not willing to manage it otherwise. We put it on an edge along the creek and we don't care if it spreads. You know, it's not spreading enough for my taste. You know, I want more of it.
Say again about fermenting it.
Okay, so that's that. You can make a fermentation out of all kinds of what I call bioaccumulators, what are called bioaccumulators in the garden. And this is once again off topic, but we can roam a little bit, right? Basically, these are plants that go deep and bring up lots of minerals, and oftentimes they also have a lot of nitrogen, so they're full of nutrients. And then you simply jam them into a bucket or some other kind of container and let them sit until they stink. And boy, do they stink.
In water.
In water, yep, in water. And then you simply feed your plants it. And now, I kind of thought, boy, was I wrong to do that when Dr. Lanningham taught me that fermented things, the anaerobically digested things, have toxins that plants can't handle. And so I'd be a little leery about putting a lot of this into a potted plant. But if I've learned that and I did this for years before I learned that, and I had nothing but good effects, except for the smell, which goes away pretty quickly, by the way.
So the fermented stinging nettle tea you're talking about is for plants,
For
it's
plants,
not for human.
Yeah, good clarification, because I
Yes.
was going to the other.
No. I don't think I'd recommend drinking a fermented tea. I think it might be toxic and make you sick. You know? If you wanted to ferment this, which you probably could, you'd do it with salt to get the right kind of, yeah. We don't straight up ferment stuff. It can go south for us pretty fast, Yeah, no. I'm glad that you made clear that I hadn't made that clear enough, yeah. But you can I put all kinds of bioaccumulators now in and make a tea and feed my plants all the time. And they're very happy. Not here, it's too big an area, but my little garden in Sela. It's how I do nutrition there. Okay, so kind of jumped ahead and took us out of the categories because things have other relationships, and we'll talk about them as they come up. Okay, but we're still in the plants that we grow but didn't necessarily grow for greens, but yet we can eat them, okay? And I think we're now at okra. Okra, and I'm going to put it into the same category Roselle. How many people know Roselle? Oh, are you in for a treat?
That's the hibiscus, right?
Yes, yeah. Are known in Mexico as Flor de Jamaica, the flower of Jamaica. And all over the Caribbean and Central America, this is grown as a perennial, and it makes these wonderful calyxes and seed pod covers that are a waxy red, waxy texture and red, and they taste strongly of vitamin C. And it's what is in Red Zinger that makes it red and tastes zingy. And it's very high in vitamin C, and we love it because we make cranberry sauce substitute using those calyxes and seed pod covers, cooked with nothing but honey. Invariably, I don't know of a person yet, have you had anybody not say, I like this more than cranberry sauce? I mean, everybody says, I like this more than cranberry sauce.
It's really complex and more nuanced in a way with less tartness.
Yeah. But enough tartness to remind of cranberry sauce. And of course, cranberries aren't that easy to grow here.
So good.
And this is incredibly easy to grow here as an annual. Turns out the leaves can be eaten. The young leaves are fine to eat as greens. The older leaves in Taiwan are made into a sour soup. Okay? It's in the same family as okra, and the flower looks just like okra. It's why I put it together with okra. Okay?
Now, they're nice and sour. I mean, am I not supposed to eat the older leaves? 'Cause
No, you can eat them. If you like them, you can eat them. Yeah. Totally. So you eat the older Roselle leaves.
yeah, they have a nice sour taste.
Yeah, if they're tender enough for you to eat, you can definitely eat them,
And they're somehow thick and crunchy, so it's really pleasant.
Yeah, but if you eat too many, you may never get your Roselle. That's the issue there, But you can definitely eat them. Yeah, they're quite fine to eat. And likewise, the leaves of okra. Once again, I go for the younger leaves. And once again, all these things that are plants are grown for other purposes, you have to figure out how much you can eat. But for me to go through once a week and pick, a nice light green, big leaf off of each okra, the okra doesn't care, doesn't miss it, And frankly, we never eat as much okra as we grow anyways, so a little bit less is not a huge problem. One of my favorite greens, high in protein, abundant this time of year. One of the ones that's dry, so I love to combine it with the longevity spinach, the Malabar spinach, or the Okinawa spinach. So, cowpeas. We grow them as a cover crop, but all over the world they're grown for the beans, and we harvest and eat the beans sometimes. So the vine looks like this. I'd pick every leaf off that much of the vine. It'd all be fine. And then I just picked a bunch of vines to give you an idea I tend to take the tips like that, and they're all quite tasty. All those tips too, every bit of it is good eating, so just chop them up once again. Chef and I is a good way to do all these. The long stem I wouldn't eat. The rest of these tips are no problem. Good eating, and you get them going, they're rampant. You just probably couldn't pick enough of them to hurt the plant. It grows like crazy. So it's not a plant that we grow on purpose, but all over the world it's eaten for its greens, and I have learned to add it to my diet and thoroughly enjoy it. We passed it, we were talking about the wild plants. There's two other ones that I didn't mention, I should go back to because we're going to leave wild plants behind in a moment. This one I remembered at the last minute because it's not in the garden, and I think of it more as a spring green. But first I'm going to mention this. Does everybody know violets? Leaves are completely edible. You can eat the violets anytime. Okay.
The leaves and the flowers.
And the flowers, of course, yeah. And they're very good for you, by the way. I also put here sheep sorrel, though. Personally, it's a green, but I would never try and eat it as a cooked green. For one thing, it's called sorrel because it's high in oxalic acid. Oxalic acid can block the absorption of minerals like calcium and magnesium. So I try not to eat too much of it, though I love it. To me, sheep sorrel is a wonderful addition to salads. I love the shape of the leaf, for one thing. It's a gorgeous little shape. It's got this kind of spade-like look. And it's got a nice tart taste. This we can pass around if I can get a taste of leaf. It's a nice tart taste. You probably don't want a lot of it, but it's a wonderful addition in salads, and you probably have this growing someplace on your edges.
Wood sorrel, we have quite a bit at our place too.
The one that looks like clover that's called sour grass, yeah. Right. Yeah, I like the texture of this one more, and I like the sour more, and since they're high in oxalate, I tend to eat not as much of that one and more of this. I add it into salads. This is one that I almost forgot to mention because it's mostly a spring green, but Zev Friedman, who's a huge fan of this, cuts it back until right about now and gets to eat greens all the way up till now. This is called Sochin, our green coneflower. It's got a green cone, yellow flower. You can see it right here. This one's kind of small. I'll pass that around. These flowers are often much bigger. The cone's much taller. Looks a lot like an echinacea cone. It's closely related to echinacea. This is Sochin, is it Cherokee green, and the way they cook it, which I didn't do at first, and some restaurants aren't doing, but Zev recommends, because it has the medicinal qualities that are similar to echinacea, and you don't need that all the time. What the Cherokee did was boil it and then saute it, and they did not use the water they boiled from. But that water could be used if you were sick, because it's going to be similar to echinacea. The root is actually used for in similar ways to echinacea. So these greens this one here is probably even still tender enough to eat. Very interesting flavor. I highly recommend it. It's a woodland plant. The site I was looking at right now, just to check in and see if anything else is about it, says that it has which I don't get. Okay, I get it a bit of a carrot flavor. And they recommend it, therefore you know it really well, because things in the carrot family can be deadly poisonous. I don't think it looks at all like carrot. And I've known it for years. To me, the leaf is very obvious. It's a rosette when it first starts growing. I don't think I'd ever mix it up with anything in the carrot family, but they recommend that you first let it flower and get to know it and know where it is so you don't make any mistake and eat anything in the carrot family. And that is always good advice. I mean, I just gave a talk for the free clinic and with AmeriCorps at the Highland Lake Inn, and one woman who was in the medical field kept saying, very interesting, but you really need to know these very well. And then she sent me the story of the guy into the wild who ate something he thought was a wild potato and died. And so she was just real aware of what the danger was. The risk was so great that we shouldn't eat any of these wild things. Frankly, there's not much danger to any of the things I've showed you. They're pretty hard to mix up with anything else. And I think if you spend a little bit of time, that you'll find this in the same family. Yeah.
This is Sochan, right? Sochan?
Yeah.
Okay, so it also comes up early in the spring.
Yeah,
very
totally.
early. So that's another way to identify it.
It comes up early in the spring.
Yeah, you might recognize it then and then watch it, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And see, that's when most people eat it, but Zeb made the point that if you cut it back, you can keep it tender for a long time. And it can take some shade, which means you could grow it in some shade, have it through the summer, and probably not impact it. It won't be propagating as much, but you could probably really kind of abuse it, get a lot of greens, still let it flower, you know. So it's one of these ones that are pretty easy to have, yeah.
So those greens produce that flower.
Yep. This is the bottom, that's the top, yeah. And that happens a lot. As plants go up, the flower changes. I mean, the leaf shape changes. And indeed, I think it was Julia Blankenship's site, she talks about eating those leaves at the top well into the summer because they're still tender. You know, so you could, but to me it's too much picking. I'd rather cut it back and get the leaves to be big and then harvest it, you know. And the truth is, I don't eat these at all right now. It's a possibility, but I got so many other things, I just let them grow. But I could, and once again, if the food system got interrupted, I'd be cutting these guys back, and in a week or two I'd have greens again. So it's something that you can count on.
And do you cook those or?
Absolutely, you boil them, remember? Take them out of the water and saute them, leaving the water behind because of that echinacea-like impact. You know, so and I didn't do that at first, I'm still alive, but Zeb made the point, you know, you can take a lot of echinacea, it's not going to kill you, but too much can actually suppress the immune system. You really want to take it only when you're sick, and then take enough of it. That's another discussion though. Okay, so I think that covers all, and I just realized I'd left those out as I went through my writing because I didn't remember the, and that is called Sochin, and it is in the wild family, which I've kind of covered already, so I wanted to be sure to go back to that. Though I didn't cover purslane, and did I even bring purslane? I'm gonna have to go down to the garden to show you. Does anybody not know purslane?
Yeah, you got it right there.
Okay, good. Yep. Okay. This is another favorite green. This is pretty remarkable for one thing, but you don't want to cook it in. So this is one that works great in a salad. People from Lebanon love this. It's a national dish. Okay. And it is made, you know, I learned this from the woman who runs the Gypsy Queen, the food truck in Asheville. She stopped at my booth years ago when I was selling it at the market because I've always sold weeds at market. And she was just thrilled to see it. She said, in Lebanon, they make a kind of tabbouleh. You know how good tabbouleh has tons of greens in it? Well, this is one of the greens. And they season it with sumac. And sumac is used, I just was hearing somebody on the radio talking about Persian cooking. Sumac is used as a seasoning throughout the Middle East. And so,
Berries?
the berries, yes. Yep, yeah. That tart berry taste, you know. So this is, and then I just was at another event. Hart Squire, turns out, is Lebanese, and he said, I have so much, I'm going to make the Lebanese salad out of it. So it's a standard Lebanese salad to cook, chop a lot of this up. You can chop up the stems, they're fine. Indeed, I had friends who used our garden while we were living away for a while, and they bred these to make big fat stems, because Yule Gibbons talks about pickling these stems, and they're making pickles from the stems of purslane. So what's really fascinating about it is if you don't cook it and denature the oils, this is the second highest plant available source of omega-3 fatty acids.
Did you say that's purslane or sumac?
This is purslane. Sumac is what they season the salad with. Sumac makes the staghorn sumacs, you know, those big red kind of things that are growing around the, you know, that's kind of a weedy tree. Mm-hmm. That's the sumac. So no, sumac is not a green. It's simply what in the Mideast they season the salad they make this with. You know,
What's the other omega-3 oil, high oil?
Flax. So flax oil, you know, once again, about the only way you're really going to get that and have it be good for you is if you take the fresh seeds and grind them up and put them on your cereal, not hot, or get the oil, you know, literally there's a book called Fats and Oils by Udo Erasmus. He describes that in Europe before World War II, flax oil was delivered like milk. In other words, it was brought once a week because it had to be fresh. And it's very, very good for you. But this is actually an easier way to have it fresh, because you simply take this, bring it into your kitchen. You could also chop this up and chop it up and then put it in a blender and make it with pesto. It kind of substitutes the oil. You don't need as much oil, and you're getting that, you know, once again, if you eat it right away, you're getting the good that's in omega-3s. So it's very good that way. I right now have on my deck, with another plant we're going to touch on in a moment, this growing, and I harvest it all the time, it just keeps coming back. I try and keep it back because it's not the plant I want in the pot, but I can't kill it because it's good food to eat, and I can, you know, I didn't remember to bring greens up. I can grab this and several other things, weeds growing out of my pots, and have a nice handful of greens with my breakfast. And I did it last Thursday and I was able to do it again today. So it comes back that fast. Quite tasty, abundant, and I recommend it not cooked, though it cooks up fine. I've been cooking it because I want cooked greens with my eggs. But I recommend it not cooked. It's one that works with salads. So that and the sheep sorrel could be, I don't think you're gonna make a salad just of that though. Actually, I didn't get to taste it. The crowd was big and I didn't get to it. But Hart was making one that was mostly this, a Lebanese salad. So it can be. I wish I'd gotten that. I could talk to you more how to make it as just a salad unto itself. But I tend to add it to leafy green salads. Okay. It's called smartweed. It's a polygonum related to giant knotweed and related to the next thing I'm going to show you, which is not a weed here, but can become weedy. And there's many variations on this. What I did leave for sure behind at the other greenhouse is one that is 6 feet tall and the leaves are like that wide and this long. And that one's called lady's thumbprint because it has a much more distinct, this one too has a coloration on some of the leaves. If I pass it around, you'll be able to see it. Basically, it's got a coloration that looks as if a lady had grabbed it and left her thumbprint. So that's why it's called lady's thumbprint. So that's smartweed. And why I thought this should be edible is there is a herb, Vietnamese cilantro, looks exactly like this. I mean, it is a very close relative, except for it has a cilantro flavor. And so I figured it has to be edible. I don't know how much, right? And so I haven't eaten tons of this, but now this is also grown in the same pot with the purslane and, by the way, a galansoga and a little bit of chickweed, which is the wrong time of year for. And so I just grab all of them and they're part of my breakfast when I haven't remembered to bring herbs. And I've been eating it for about 3 weeks now, no ill effects. This person, and then the thing that made me say, yes, I'm going to talk about it, and I wish I had brought the other one because the leaves are big enough to be worth it. This is going to be a lot of work for food, but the big one has a lot of big leaves. There's a Filipino one that is grown as a vegetable. And it looks very similar to the big one. But what I also found out is, and it's not surprising because the Vietnamese cilantro is a little hot. Some of them have a peppery quality that actually could be irritating. They're used more as herbs. And so I would taste them and make sure they're not too peppery because that might irritate you. And I'd see which ones are good. This isn't that bad. I can eat it. It's no problem. But it's not widely spoken of as an edible, so I wouldn't overdo it. I'd keep my antenna up. There might be some reason not to. But I know several people that are eating it. It's fine. And there's at least one cultivar besides the herb Vietnamese cilantro that's quite big that they apparently eat a lot of in the Philippines. Anyway, its close relative is this one. Hotunia. I think that's how you pronounce it, Hotunia. And this one has a more ornamental version of it, which is called the Chameleon Plant, which has lots of purple and white, and is very pretty, and a rapidly spreading ground cover. I got this from Joe Hollis, who's a major plant maven here in the mountains, and he said, Pat, I'd contain it. This can really take over. So I have it in a big container down there, and it's making a lot. What I love about it, and this is all about who you are. There's been different descriptions of the flavors, none of which I got, but the one that I read that I thought was pretty funny that I'll pass on and may prejudice you, but I don't experience it that way. I'll tell you what I think it tastes like, and other people have said it tastes like, but some people have said it kind of tastes like cheap perfume and diesel. Not going to appeal to you a whole lot, right? To me, it's a cilantro flavor, and I love it because I can put it in curries, and the average cilantro, if you're not careful, it's gone. If you cook it too long, you don't even taste it. Basically, it's best to chop it up and put it at the last minute. But I can pick enough of this to have it be a green, chop it up, and I get the cilantro flavor. I'll pass it around, and you can see what you think of it. Joe called it a fishy flavor. I don't get fish at all. To me, it's cilantro. Joe doesn't like cilantro at all, so maybe he didn't want to talk about that, But this is an abundant grower. If you, once again, you had it in a place where you could mow, you could get a lot more of it because it would be really big. I've gotten a big pot, so I don't get to eat tons of it. But I'm going to find a place where I can totally manage it, and I'm going to let it go crazy because I like it a lot. And once again, no trouble growing it at all. Completely hardy. Yeah.
Say it again.
H-O-U-T-U-N-H-O-Y, Hoy, Tunia. T-U-N-I-A. I'm pretty sure, let's see, let me show you. I wrote it down here. Yeah, H-O-U-Y-T-U-N-I-A. I'm pretty sure that's how you spell it. It's a polygonum. If you put in polygonum and spell that kind of, it'll show up on Google, I actually couldn't even remember the name of it the longest time. I finally got the name, but I'm still working on the pronunciation. Some of these things have strange pronunciations. I've only grown this for about 3 years now, but I thoroughly enjoy it as an addition, especially once again in curries or Oriental food, because to me it has this cilantro flavor. Anybody got an opinion on the fragrance?
Yeah, it's kind of odd. It's kind of cilantro, but also like diesel.
Cheap diesel,
Yeah,
cheap
yeah.
perfume and diesel. Okay,
It's
yeah.
odd,
Yeah, some people don't like it. I know that, you know. So, and years ago, I learned that taste buds are totally different because I had yet to have cilantro. Joe said, I got that growing in the garden. I don't like it. I tasted it. I said, wow, it kind of tastes like olive oil. He said, huh. I thought it tasted like rancid fat. Taste buds are different. You'll just have to try it, you know. You're all welcome to take a couple leaves home, chop it up. I'd cook it, and a little flavor go a long way. You can see what you think of it. Decide if you want to grow it, you know. Okay, so really, we're getting close, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the growing qualities for these things. But the ones that I haven't tried, that I should try, and this is mostly not prejudice, but one is, and I'll show it to you. And this one here, I don't know, I may never do anything but brew it. Ground ivy, also known as creeping Charlie. Now what I've read people say is you can eat it, but I wouldn't eat too much, it's kind of strong. And I would probably second that because what I know it mostly of is from a book called Sacred and Healing Beers. And it's used along with yarrow and something I'm pretty sure called swamp or bog rosemary as a replacement for hops. And indeed, according to Stephen Booner, the basically imposition of hops, the German Pure Beer Act, he says was actually the first drug war. Because it turns out that if you brew with this in yarrow and bog rosemary, the result is a beer that causes great elation and an increase in libido. And this was not popular with the monks. So they encouraged hops instead, which for most people kind of settles you down, you know. So there's a whole debate now. I know Wicked Weed's whole premise is named after hops as being the persecuted green, but actually by the establishment favored it. You know, so the people rallying against hops were people who wanted to maintain the pagan Celt version of beer, which had this. And by the way, the other warning is that yes, you'll have much more elation and your libido will be heavy, but if you drink too much, your hangover will be much worse too. So, you know.
The other aspect of that story is that the Gruit beers and the flavoring were a guild-controlled moneymaker. So, especially in the Catholic world, you know, they were all controlled. And you had, if you made beer to sell, you had to buy at the Gruit shop and you had to pay your tax.
Yeah. Though I guarantee you there are people breaking that law all the time. You know?
And hops, anybody could do
Uh-huh.
without tax.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Pat, you said that was ivy,
Ground ivy, also known as creeping Charlie.
right, yarrow, and what else?
The one that I don't have yet to find and I haven't done a good search is called bog or swamp rosemary. I have no idea what that plant is. And I really should look it up since I talk about it, but it's kind of nice to have a mystery too. You know, someday I'm going to bubble and go, oh my God, this is bog rosemary. You know?
So how, you said that you boil this? Is that what you said?
Yeah, people would boil this probably, yeah. You know, I just am prejudiced. I just don't, you know,
Oh, it's so invasive.
and smell it. It's kind of strong smelling. It's just like, and the leaves are small and there's lots of stems. I mean, chickweed, the leaves are small and lots of stems, but it's really good for you and the taste is wonderful. This, you know, and I confess, there are greens I know I can eat and I'm prejudiced, and maybe 10 years from now I'll say, I don't believe I didn't eat this. I eat it all the time now, but you know, I'm not there yet.
So if you were to boil that, you then eat the greens and don't use the water?
Yeah, I wouldn't use the water. If it's being used as a brewing agent, it's probably pretty strong, you know? Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's bad for you because they're putting it in beer. Other ones that will be part of my diet, I'm going to figure out when. I don't think now's the time, but I learned late in the season that goldenrod greens are edible. I suspect it'd be early in the season, so I don't know if it'd be heat of the summer. Once again, you could probably cut them back and eat them. Doug said he mostly used them as a tea, but they are considered edible. And it makes sense. It's in the aster family, and lots of those plants are edible, you know. I doubt that, I haven't heard of one that's poisonous yet. Some things, you know, Doug heard me talking about all these greens. He says, so all these marginal greens, you chop them up fine, you cook them, so why not do maple leaves and oak leaves and stuff, you know? It's like, I don't know, somebody said you can eat these, nobody said you can eat, you know, I imagine they'd be pretty tough, you know? And oak leaves in particular, I know, are high in phenols to keep bugs off. I don't think they'd be the best food. Though, when starving, the things people have eaten, you know, quite a mix. So, goldenrod, mulberry leaves. I don't have big enough mulberries I'm willing to take the leaves off and eat them. A branch broke and I meant to root it because it's easy to root, and I meant to eat the leaves, but I left it behind, and by the time I came back, it was gone. But high in protein and quite palatable. Oscar, I forget his last name, but he has a fascinating operation just before you enter into Yancey County, where he's raising pigs in the woods and feeding them things like mulberry leaves. He's got some farrow mulberries on his property, and he collects them for hay for the winter and all that, and their family eats the leaves all summer. And they're apparently very palatable and good, but I've yet to try them, so I can't personally testify. Likewise, basswood leaves are notably edible. Once again, I think all these things are going to be the young leaves. I don't think you're going to be eating the fully aged leaf. I think that'll be tough, but the young leaves are quite good. One that we don't even have here yet, so I don't even know what it looks like, but the name is Tunis sinensis, and it apparently is very good eating and will grow in our climate, and I'm determined to...
Spell that, please.
I'm pretty sure it's ToonisSien.
You've lost me. Toon.
IS, and then SIENIS, something like that. Actually, I wrote it down, my handwriting's so bad I can't read my own handwriting, so we can look it up. But it's easy to find. If you punch in, that's the great thing about Google, you don't have to spell. I mean, or DuckDuckGo, whatever you
I
use.
think that was one of the ones I was trying to get started.
Couldn't find it. Well, I've had a little trouble finding it too, but I'm going to find it. If you leave me your contact info, I can buy one for you when I get it too. Okay. That one's hardy. You don't have to bring that in. It'll make it in our climate, so that one appeals to me a whole lot. And apparently the leaves are very good eating, And I included down here ground ivy because I don't really eat that either. And the woodland stuff's all covered. So that's all pretty much the plants that I use for summer greens. What I didn't cover, which is an obvious one, is I grow lettuce in the summer. And it works fine, but the way you grow it is you eat it young. You don't try to grow it big. I also grow mostly the crisp heads. Ones that we're growing right now include Magenta and Nevada, but one that I've loved that I just can't find the seed for that I like right now. There's a version of the seed out there that's like a Tom Thumb version, but years ago I even wrote an article in the Citizen Times for it in the 90s called Bronze Mignette. And the little one now, yeah, it's okay in the heat, but the big one is a crisp head and gorgeous, lustrous. It does really well in the heat. My favorite story about it was probably about 1996 or something, and I brought it. I used to do a radio show with Allison Arnold and Peter Lauer on WCQS, and I brought it in at the end of June. It had been growing through the whole month of June in Hendersonville. It had been a really hot June. We were mostly in the 80s the entire month of June, and we pushed the 90s a bunch of times. Now this is a crisp head. I got it to grow fast. It had plenty of water, but not even shaded. I brought a head in. We sat there around the table and we tasted it, and everybody commented on how sweet it was. So that's pretty impressive, and that I let get big. So the crisp heads can get big and not be a problem. Otherwise, I grow things like Jericho romaine and some of the other ones that are notably resistant to heat, and I just pick them young. And I just cut them I let them get about that big, and I just cut them, and they'll come back once and they're good. They're usually not more than once that time of year. But you can cut them once and they'll come back and they're fine. So that's my solution for that. And you can grow, right now we have some gorgeous daikon leaves there. You can grow some of the, especially like in cooler places like Silo, where I live, you can grow some of the brassicas. I don't recommend it if you want to grow fall brassicas and you have a small garden. Because, anybody know what those white marks are there? See the white marks?
Caterpillar eggs or something.
They are Harlequin Bug Damage. So the problem with growing brassicas in the summer is you keep your Harlequin bugs going. Whereas if you get rid of all of your brassicas sometime in June when it gets hot and they're not doing as well and have a break, then by fall you don't get hit as hard by the brassicas. You can pass that back and you see the little white spots. That'll show you. The other solution though is to control if you're willing to go out there and check for eggs and crush the Harlequin bugs, you can grow those greens in the summertime too. With varying success depending on where you are. It's hot enough here that they're not all that good. They'll go pretty far though. They'll be fine still in July, but then as we're getting into the dog days of summer, not that impressive. But you can grow them, they're fine. And then of course, right now you can be seeding things like turnips, and by the end of August you'll have greens to eat. And they'll be good, they'll be delicious. And I didn't mention chard. Chard can take the heat too. The thing about chard is, depending on where you are, in the heat and humidity, it can get Cercospora. Okay, there's like one spot here. Usually there's many more spots, I'll pass this around, that show up. But that red spot, your chard and your beets will get covered up with those red spots, and then eventually they'll turn into dead areas. And literally your plant can look blasted. It gets it so bad. And that disease is called Cercospora. And for the longest time I didn't know that it had alternate hosts, but then I remembered that I was seeing the same kind of thing on doc, and I kept bothering pathologists till one looked it up and said, yeah, Pat, it's an alternate host. And that's why we can't grow chard very easily most summers. This summer, actually, there's a volunteer out in the garden with not a bit of Cercospora on it. But most summers, our beets and our chard, by this time of year, are just a mess with Cercospora. Now, you can grow them until you decide it's too much trouble, and the inner leaves are the last to get it. Then cut them down, and they'll just kind of sit there and malinger, kind of bothered by the Cercospora, and then as it cools off, they'll boom up and make big, gorgeous leaves again. So you don't have to give up on it, and depending on the year, this year apparently the entire summer, they'll go through and you can get to eat them. So chard, and it doesn't, once again, it doesn't respond particularly badly to the heat. It might be a little stronger tasting in oxalic acid, but it's not that bad. It's a pretty good green no matter the heat. Whereas the brown.
Just been cutting those leaves that are heavily infected off, you know, and putting in the compost, and even if I knew the corn, then it just comes right back.
Yeah, so you can do that too and just keep it going, you know. We sometimes get it so bad that it just, the stuff comes up and it's that tall and it's covered up with it already, you know. And then it's just like, okay, I'm done with it, you know, I just kind of ignore it. But if I don't pull it out, it tends to come back booming as August is ending and it cools off. So it's a, you know, chard's supposedly a biennial, but I've had them last for years. You know, roots like this, you know, great big roots. They just flower and then they die back and then they come up again and they just keep going and going.
Maybe you can tell me this, I overwintered 2 of them last year, just to see what happens. And it just changes completely. It gets into this 6-foot-tall plant, you know, with just a million seeds.
Yep.
And the stems are just browning out now, which means that the seeds supposedly will be pickable soon.
Oh yeah, sure.
They're supposed to be viable.
Oh yeah, they'll be viable. You can definitely save them. I've saved a half a bucket full and brought it to seed saving events, you know. Yeah, that'll be fine, you know. And then it'll just like start growing again, probably. You know, it tends to just keep going and going. Though it may be harboring Cercospora, but then if you've got tons of doc and other sources, you know. And interestingly, I had a member of a CSA once who had been in another CSA, and she said to them, the only thing I miss about yours is I can't get beets from Patrick in the summer. They said, can't grow beets? What's this problem? They're the easiest thing in the world to grow. I saw him at Morgan's and said, so do you have much Cercospora? He goes, what's that? So it's not everywhere, you know. But if he had it, he wouldn't find beets as easy to grow in the summer, you know. And there's resistant beets. I've never seen a chard listed as being resistant, but there's like Ace and Merlin and a few other beets are resistant. And so that just means, though, that the greens still aren't that good to eat, but the plant still makes a root despite the fact that the greens are going to be being tore up. Okay, so I think we're past our official time, but any questions? I mean, all these plants, really, there's not a lot that's hard to grow about them. Of the weeds just kind of grow themselves. There's the invasiveness of the Houtunia. You got to bring the longevity and Okinawa spinach in the wintertime. The lamb's quarters, you got to find spots where it's going to be this nice this time of year. Lots of times by now, unless you have some that are coming up late, it has mostly gone to seed. The leaves are pretty dry and not that exciting, and they're not that big, and you're picking a lot of leaves to get much to eat. So I tend to just grab the tips, and usually, unless I find a spot where they're quite rich and nice, which this is, I give up on those and switch to the Amaranth, the Purslane, the Gallon Soga, and don't bother with this one, you know. But from this whole mix, you can eat a ton of greens. And I'm going to actually try to convince, you know, growers that if they are strategic in knowing where they have all this stuff so it's close enough together, they could have an intern or somebody say, go pick the summer braising greens, go pick the summer curry greens, and not try to just, you could sell things like callaloo if you grow it, or if you have lots of amaranth, you could sell that up as a straight up vegetable, but I almost think that mix is going to be more appealing. And then, if they have to prune their cucumbers, I think actually people will start to lighten that, all the different flavors, and just the fun that there's so many different things that you can eat. It's pretty exciting. In my head, this was a 6-hour class, and we were going to be out and be able to walk around and look at all these, and then we were going to cook them all, and try them. And they're actually pretty interesting eating. There's a lot of different things you can do with it. And I delight in them. That's my, I actually probably eat as much, weird, wild, and unintended greens as I eat the summer vegetables that we grow. And there's some weeks that I never remember to eat the green beans and the squash. I'm busy eating these, and I don't remember to grab the green beans and the squash, and I'm doing fine. It works fine for me. Any questions? If people want, I can give you starts of a bunch of these. And I can also show you the centralized place we planted stuff, but we got it in so late because where I'd planned on doing the plantings was some gardens further back, and we have to put up fencing. The groundhogs and the deer have just been devastating stuff there. So I finally got a space opened up, and you can see what these guys look like young. And then you can get a sense of what the longevity in the Okinawa look like, because I can put some pretty big plants in of those. And then we'll be down at the greenhouse, and I can give anybody that wants some starts. But if you want Malabar, unless only one person wants it, then I can dig the one I put in here to show. It's not very far along, and you could take it. But if a bunch of people want it, we'd have to go over to the Granville greenhouse, which I'm happy to do. But we're going to call this the end of the official one now. If you want to join me in the greenhouse and walk into the garden and take a look at stuff, I'm happy to show you that stuff too.
Yeah, I got a question. What's your secret for groundhogs?
I think the best secret is a good shot, personally. I wish I had a better solution. I don't. Well, I got a tip though, once you get rid of them, and this came from Growing for Market, which is you find their holes, and right now, this time of year, you be sure to fill their holes with spent kitty litter. Otherwise, the young ones that have to move out, right, they're not allowed to stay where their parents were, they take over the old dens. So if you don't want them to easily establish, you make sure that their holes are not agreeable to them. Supposedly that's not going to chase one out that's established, it'll just throw it back out again, but nobody's moving in. You can imagine moving into a house that smells like spent kitty litter. Probably not going to rent that one, Might just keep looking for one that's not, quite so vile, but that's what I know about groundhogs.
Any other final greens questions?
And to be fair, groundhog is a greens question on 2 levels.
Yes.
When you eat them, you're essentially eating greens, your greens, and you can't grow greens without having a control for them. So it's a totally valid question on subject, unlike several that I covered today. Okay, so I think that's done in the formal part, and now we can do a tour if you want.